Hello everyone, I hope everyone is doing fine. I am really excited to start this WebGIS live session series today. I know in the last week we had to cancel the session because there was some health issue, but now let's get started with this series again. If you are following the Geospatial Python series as well, we just had a session 2 days ago, so make sure that you are in a Slack channel where you will get notification for the Python as well as for the WebGIS training. If you are not connected to the Slack channel yet, I would highly recommend to check the description and join the group. Without wasting any time, let's now get started with the HTML. So I will simply open my terminal and I will go to desktop, WebGIS dev, and I will open it in my code editor. Okay, so far so good. If you remember from our last video, what we did is we installed VS Code and we installed this live server extension for the VS Code. If you're using any other code editor, let it be Atom or anything like that, the chances are pretty high that you will have an extension tab available where you can actually go and download any extension that you want. So make sure that you have the live extension activated so that it's very easy for you to check your code all the time whenever you are coding. And most importantly, we covered the basics of HTML. I believe by this time you are familiarized with the HTML boilerplate code, how exactly HTML tag begins, what is head tag, what is body tag, and things like that. Today we will dive a little bit deep into HTML and cover some of the most important topics. So this is going to be the last lecture for HTML part. And I know it's very hard to cover entire HTML in just 2 sessions in just 4 hours, but bear with me. Because of time constraints, I will be only taking things which are absolutely necessary for you to move forward. There are thousands and thousands of things that you can personally learn, some tags that you can personally discover, and then work with those. Again, if you don't know where to find such tags, I would highly recommend W3 Schools. Here inside tutorials, you can go under Learn HTML and understand everything about HTML. There are so many things that you can discover on your own, and of course, you can try it yourself by going into the try it yourself section and work over here. So, if I make any changes, this is a heading that I changed, and I can simply run it to see my changes available over here. This is a perfect way for you to get started. Even when you are in transportation or even if you are commuting to some place, you can simply open this website on your mobile phone and play with it. You don't need computer or laptop or any software installed to get started with HTML. So again, it is my humble request for everyone to practice HTML before we move forward. This is very important because this is the most basic thing that we should know and we should feel confident about before moving into the details of web development. Now back to our topic. We have discovered what is p tag, paragraph. We have also checked the tags from h1, big heading, all the way up to h6, smallest heading. Then we have seen tags such as strong text, and we have also seen how to create lists. So an unordered list containing all the ingredients to make a coffee. So it can be milk, water, coffee powder, and simply if I save this I will make sure that I am live, and there we go. We have a paragraph, we have a big heading, we have a smallest heading, we have a strong text which is of course bold, and then we have unordered list of things that we need to make coffee. So far these are all the basic tags that we have covered. Now we will see some more advanced tags that are not actually just independent tags, but it is family of tags that we need to combine in order to make something. So the best example of that can be a table. Table. If you take a look at any table, let's say school timetable images, if you have a look at any basic timetable, you will see that generally this is how you will have a timetable. You will have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then most of the time you will have period A, period B, like that all the way up to the last period. So let's say it can be 7 periods or 10 periods depending upon your school. So how exactly we can build a timetable like this? So for example, in this timetable, if you have a look at uh, some of the cells, you will notice that some of the cells are covering more area. For example, this on Friday, this staff professional training is actually covering the time from 8:30 all the way up to 9. So this is covering three rows. Just like that, if you consider lunch, the entire row is showing lunch. So that means even if we combine all these cells together, this will still work. So we want to create something like this using HTML. Now this is what we will keep as our target, and we will build this one. So we will get started with building a very basic table first. So the tag for table is obviously known as table, and inside this now we have to put our data. But we have to be very careful about how we are arranging the data, because so far we have seen tags such as heading or paragraph, which are independent tags. That means in paragraph you can write anything within a paragraph and it is fine. But that is not the case with the table. When you consider table, you have to give some sort of instructions to HTML that what is the first cell, what is the second cell, how exactly we are going into the next line, and things like that. So we have to be very careful about it. The general way and the most simplest way that we can create a table is by using the tag of table and then defining data inside a row. So a row in a table will start with tr and obviously end with tr as well. Now inside this, we will have a single cell. So a single cell will be represented by tag of td. So in TD, you can write anything and that will appear in a single cell. So let's say cell 1. Just like that, you can have multiple TD inside one TR. So cell 2, let's say cell 3. And you are not just bound to write text in it. You can have anything inside this. I can literally have a image inside this. So let's try to do that. What I will do is I will simply download some image, or I will take a screenshot of this, and I will pull this image in my VS Code test.png, and I can actually write image tag in here and the source will be test.png. As simple as that. Okay, if I now save this and head back to my browser, you will see that I got this really huge image. So let me first change the width to something very small, let's say 50 pixels, that's all. So you can see that we have cell 1, cell 2, and then this image. Although this doesn't look like a table at all right now, but bear with me. If I now create one more T row, now this means that now I am moving into the second line. So my first line now has 1, 2, and 3 cells, and now my second line obviously is also going to have 3 cells. So I can have TD. Let's say I write some fruits over here: apple, orange, banana. And now if I save this, now you can see that okay, now this is looking a little bit like a table. You see, we have cell 1, cell 2, this image, then apple, orange, banana written in the second row. Just like that, I can keep on copying these rows and it will keep on adding data. Okay, so very first thing that we want in our table is usually a border, right? So we would expect some sort of borders to be there. To do that, I will simply add a property of border with a width, let's say as a 1. And you can see that immediately we have a border of width 1 pixel, and now it looks more like a table. For the sake of example, I will remove this image and I will add simply a text over here so that we can experiment with it. Okay, now this looks like a table, right? What if I make it as a 2? You can see that now we have a thicker table. Just like that, if I make this screen smaller, then you can notice the changes on the fly. Okay, if I make it as 3 and if I save this, you can see that now the width is thicker compared to the first one. I will again go back to 1, and here we are. Now this is what we have did till now. We have created a table, and then all the data are divided into rows, and then inside rows we have cells. But generally, if you have a look at any table, you will notice that most of the time the heading of the table or the header of the table will be a little bit thicker or bolder, which will actually give a user an idea that this is a head. So what we will do is we'll try to convert this into a head. So one way to do this is by simply writing the text inside a bold or a strong tab, right? So I can do something like this, and this will make this tag a little bit bolder. But this is not the correct way to do this, because in the end this is still a TD, which means this is still a normal cell. We don't want that. So the way to deal with this is by using something known as TH. So TD stands for cells and TH stands for the header cells. So now if I write cell 1, TH cell 2, and let's say TH cell 3. If I now save this, and I think I have to change this because this is no longer necessary. If I save this, you can now notice that without providing any extra styling, we still got bolder headings. So this is how TH is used. Okay, I hope this is clear, guys. So we will start with creating rows, and then rows will have heading if required. Otherwise, they will have normal cells inside which you will add all the data that you want. But again, if you have a look at it, you will notice that all of these are in fact rows only. So there is no distinction that this is a heading or this is a body, or let's say we have something footer as well, that this is a footer. So in order to do that, what we do is we actually wrap this tr into one more tag. Now for to talk about heading, we will have something known as t-head. So we will actually wrap this tr under t-head, and this will make it as a head. Just like that, all the remaining tags will be under t-body. So if I enclose this under t-body, then this will act as a t-body, and then this will act as a head. Now why do we need this? Because then we can play with this styling for that specific row. So if I make any changes over here, you can notice that only this is changed. All other data still remains the same. I can also make the same change to the body. Let's say if I make the background color cadet blue. So you can notice that now the background color for just the body is blue. Just like T head and T body, we also have T footer. So T foot will actually denote that the row inside this is a footer row. So I will have TR and then TD, and then I will write foot 1, foot 2, foot 3. Now why do we actually need to differentiate between T body, T foot or T head? This is because when we will deal with the JavaScript, at that time we will have to be very careful about at what area are we targeting, or what area are we filling our data. Generally what will happen is that the information inside a table will come from some sort of API or from backend, but the T head or the heading of the table is going to be same all the time, right? So in that case, instead of targeting for table, we will target for T body, and then inside that T body, we will keep on adding the T row and ultimately TD. So this is how it will work. So I hope this is clear to you guys. Now back to our main problem. Now this table, by using T head, T body, T foot, TH and TD, we can create this table, not a problem. But the problem will arise when we want to create this Friday, or when we want to create this interval. So now let's try to create this example as it is. Okay. So what I will do is I will actually add this image on the HTML so that we will have that image in front of us, and then we will add uh, things one by one to it. So image test.png. If I save this, I will actually make the width a little bit smaller. 50 is fine. Maybe we can go 150. Okay. Now I will remove this table and we will create completely new table. Okay, so far so good. Now first thing that we will notice is that whenever we want to create a table, we will start with the table, and then we will start with the heading, and then inside this we will add our row, and then inside this we will add our first heading. So you can see that first cell is empty, so we don't need to add anything in it. Then for the second cell we can write Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday and Friday. Okay, so far so good. You can see that we immediately got the T head written for us. Okay, now we will move forward and create a T body. If you think about it, the first column till this Thursday column are very simple. We can actually create it. So instead of writing this entire text, I will write some dummy text to save our time. So the first TD will be 8:30 to 8:45, and then I will add some random TD for 1, 2, 3, 4 times. So A, B, C and D. Okay, now for the fifth one, this cell is actually spanning till 3 columns, so we have to be careful with it. Now to actually see the difference, we will add border so that you will be able to see the difference. So border of 1, and now what we will do is we will add a TD with E, and this we will add one more property known as row span, and it should be spanned for 3 rows. So that is why I will give the number 3 over here. Now if I copy this and if I paste it 3 times without the last TD, let's see if it works. So the timing will be 8:40 to 8:50, and finally 8:50 to 9 o'clock. Okay, if I save this now, notice what happened. This E is now covering this E is now covering the span of 3 rows. So all these 3 cells are combined together to create one cell. So this is how exactly we will use the row span characteristic. Now for the interval, so you can see that for all the columns we have the same value written over here known as interval. So what we will do is we will add a tr, inside which we will add the first td, which is for time, and we will write 10:30 to 10:50. And then just like row span which covers the vertical rows, we will add a column span, and we will simply write how much columns it should cover, and it should cover 1 2 3 4 5. So td with col span of 5, and I will write interval in it. Interval. Okay. Now if I save this and if I copy our previous row after this so that you will see the difference, notice that this is covering the single cell. So what I will do is I will simply copy it, paste it one more time, and I will add a new timing. So from 10:50 to 11:50. Okay, if I save this, now you can see the difference. We have interval for all the 5 columns. So this is how we use the row span and column span to actually combine these cells together. So I hope this is clear to you guys. So this is how we create tables in HTML. So is there any question till now? Okay, so I hope table is clear. Now we will move to the most important topic in HTML, which is regarding forms. So far we have seen that we are writing some information in our HTML file and we are getting the response on the screen. But most of the time when you will see the websites, uh, even for let's say a good website can be this, you have some sort of input bar. So where user can actually write something and then that interactivity is there. So we will see how to add such type of input bars in our application. Okay, so I will save this file and I will create a new file, input.html. Okay, now generally whenever we deal with anything like sign up or registration or even logging in or payment or anything like that, these are generally forms. So forms are created inside which we ask user for some of the inputs, and once the inputs are provided, then we will take that data and then we will process it in our backend. So generally we will have the data connected or and sent to an API, or maybe we will write some PHP code on our own where we will pass this data and ultimately this data will be stored in the database. So this is how the journey is. We will generally create a input code where user will type input, then we will add a send button or submit button or something like that, on click of which this data will be taken and this will be sent via API or via backend code into the database. Okay, So in this video we will just cover the front end part of it. Now I will save this and I will open this file, input.html, and obviously this file is going to be empty. So let me give a heading, creating forms in HTML. Okay, if I save this, we are good to go over here and we will add a very basic form. So obviously to add a form, the tag will be form, but it is not just the tag. You will see that we have a compulsory property attached to it known as action, and we will also add one more property known as method. So generally there will be two types of methods, get and post. So get means fetching the data, post means sending the data. So like that we can add get or post requests. And actions, in under the action tab we will generally have something like a PHP file location, so that whenever we are clicking on the submit button, this data will be sent to something like index.php or any other PHP file that we will create. This is how the form works, and whatever input that we write inside these forms will be actually used when we submit the form. So we will start with a very basic input, a text input. Okay, so your name, and then I will add an input known as text. So the type will be text and name can be any name that you want to give. So my name, and then generally ID will be there. So again, ID is a property and we will talk more about it in the later part of today's video. Okay, so for now let's just give the ID my name. So if I save this, you can see that immediately we have an input box where then I can start typing. I can type anything that I want over here. So you can see with just one tag we have this functionality where we can add a input bar in our application. Now generally when we use form we have one more input known as submit. So this is actually a button with the value as something that you want to write to see on the button. So send the information. If I write this and if I add a button, you will see that I will have a button known as send the information. Let me add a couple of BR tags, and there we go. If I now type Krishna and if I click on send this information, you will see that my URL, which was earlier just 5500 slash input.html, is now changed and we have this question mark and then my name is equal to Krishna. So what happened over here? So what happened is this question mark denotes that whatever pair that you will see after this part of the URL is generally a pair of the name and the value. So if I change the name to my name 1 and if I wrote Krishna one more time, you will see that you now have my name 1 is equal to Krishna. And generally this is how the information is sent via parameters. This is one way to send information, and obviously this is not very secured way, but this is just to show you that you can like this create a form, and when you click on submit, the data will be sent to the index.php file where then this data will be processed. Of course this is not secured, and the reason why I say that it is not secured is this. So generally whenever we will have any website where with the login information or something like that, you will see that you will have one username column or email column and you will have a password column. So inside this whatever you type, it is not visible, it is hidden under these dots, and if you have this show button then obviously you can see the data, but most of the time the data is not visible. If we use the same submit method, let's see what will happen. So if we add a password input and if I add a input of the type password, now you can see that if I save this and let me first add password over here and maybe a BR tag. Okay, if I write my name, this is fine. If I write my password, you can see that whatever I write here, it is fine because no one can see what it is. But when I click on send information, you can see, okay, let me try to do that again. So you can see that we have not added the name and ID. So let me first add that as well. So my password and also the name, ID is my password. Okay, if I save this, if I refresh, again I will write Krishna and password. Okay, if I send this information, now you can see that in my URL I have this my name 1 is equal to Krishna and then my password is equal to whatever I have written. So if we use something like this, our password is obviously not secured because this will not work. uh, because the password will not be secured and will not be very good way to actually send the data, because whatever code that you have written, someone might hack into it and get information about your password. So this is not something that we want to do. Make sure that you are not using this traditional way of filling and submitting the form. Okay, so far let's just concentrate on the input types. There are several input types available under the HTML. So if I do input in HTML and if I go to the W3 Schools website, you will see that there are so many input types available. We will have a look at few of them now. Okay, so the very common ones are name, password, and email. So how do you differentiate between text and email? Let's see now. Your email and input will be of the type email, name, my email, ID, my email. I will let you know the use case of ID and why you should always add ID very soon. Can anyone please confirm if my voice is clear? Thank you. If I now add this email, you can see that if I write the name, this is fine, and if I don't write the email, if I write password, and if I just write something like this, you will see that when I try to click on please submit information, it immediately gives me a message that please include @sign. This is very important, right? Whenever you will have an email ID, that will actually contain the @sign. So only and only if you add this @sign, your data will be submitted properly. So you have to be very careful with what type of input you are adding. If you want email, then this is the best way to get a secured way of making sure that your user will actually add email and not anything else. Okay, moving forward, then we have URL as well. So your website, input type URL, name is my site, ID is my site, and I will add a BR tag. Okay, now you can see that again if I add anything, it will tell me that it has to be a proper URL. You cannot just add the name. So even if I do google.com, it will tell me that this is not correct URL. The reason being that if we go to google.com, you will see that when you actually copy this URL and paste it over here, it will have HTTPS or HTTP depending upon the SSL certification of the site. It will have the protocol colon then dash dash or a slash slash, either www or even it can have something like this, and this will still work. If I send the information now, this will be a valid information. Okay, so this is very useful when you want to get your users website or something like that. Okay, now moving forward, just like email and website, you also have input for date, your date. So I will add an input of type date, name my date, and here you go. Now this date is actually the reason why we add this date is because then we directly get access to the calendar way, and depending upon which browser you are using, you will see different type of calendars. So for the Chrome or Brave, you will see a very nice calendar where then you can actually scroll through the years, then through the months, and then select the dates. So this is very useful way to select the dates. And when you send the information, then you can see that you have year, then month, and the date. So this is not the format that you are stuck with. Obviously, if you want some another format, you can get some another format. That is not a problem. So there is one question that how we can create a secure password. So what did I meant when I said that we are not going to use this method is that we are not going to use this method to submit the data, not to add the password. To add password, this is the best way to do, because here whatever you type, you will never see your password, you cannot reveal it. So this is the best way to type your password. It is just that this is not the best way to transfer your data from HTML back to the database. Okay, so date is clear, and just like date we also have time. So I will add one more BR tag and I will write your time. Input type will be time, my time, and you can see that when we add time, we will now have a input with a clock. So right now this is showing 24 hours clock, and I can then select any hour and minute, and this is how it will be saved. If I send this information, you will see that we get 23 and then 26. This %3a means that this is actually the encoding of the data. So what do we mean by that? Generally, whenever you will see a URL, you will never see a space bar or percent sign or at the rate sign or something like that. You will always see this %2f, %3a, and things like that. This is how the encoding of the URL is done. If you simply go to Google and search for encoding decoding URL, you will see a lot of online applications which can help you to understand this encoding and decoding. So now if I paste this encoded URL and if I click on decoded, you will see that now this is much more human readable. You have https://3.bp.blogpost.com, but if I encode this, you will see that this is now hidden under this %2f or %26 uh, like this. So this is how encoding and decoding for a URL works. Okay, so we have added the time. Now we will add one more thing, which is color. So BR. So there is a question that if we want to add a visible and hide option for the password, then what should we do? So generally this sort of things are handled by JavaScript, because then you will write a code where you will change the type of this input to text, and as soon as you change it, you will see that the data is visible. So let me give you an example. So if I write some password over here, if I go to the inspect tab and using this inspect selector, if I select this input and if I change the type to text, you will see that immediately my data is visible. If I now change it back to password, you can see that my data is now secured. So this is how we can basically create a JavaScript program which will change the type of this input into password or again into the text in order to show and hide the data. Now how to do that is exactly what the job of the JavaScript is. And to help JavaScript to find this particular input, ID is used. So this is why ID is important. We will have a greater look at the ID later in this video. Okay, so we were adding color, so I can add a color picker. So your color, and then I will add input of type color. Name will be my color. Okay, if I save this, you can see that we have this color picker where once I click, it will open color picker for me. Again, this will depend upon which browser you are using. Okay, and I can select any color that I want. You can see that once I select color and once I click on send information, this will actually, I believe, will give us the hexadecimal code of that color. If I select very red color, I believe then this will give me hex code of red, which is FF0000. So this is how the colors are selected and then encoded into a hex code, which then can be stored in the database. Okay, I hope this is clear, guys. Then one more type of input that we use very often is a numeric input. So your number, and then input will be of the type number. Okay, name is my number. And how is this number different than text? In text, you can write anything. You can write alphabets as well as you can write numbers. But in the number input, you cannot write alphabet. If you type anything, you will see that it will not get added. Only when you start adding numbers, it will get added. But again, there is a exception of letter E. The reason why E can be added is because E is treated as 10 raised to the power. So if I write something like 4E3, that means 4 into 10 raised to 3. This is how it is treated. But again, this might not be the behavior that you want, and then you will have to write a JavaScript code where where you can actually disable using this E. So there is one request that can I show this HTML in a different browser. So let me open a Safari browser for you guys, and I will copy this URL and I will open it in the Safari browser. Okay, there you go. Now you can see that the input box is there, password is fine, and I have this password saving key. Now this is again strictly Safari behavior that it can save password for me. If I now click on send information, you can see that the information is sent, and if I write just the name in the email, so this is how Safari gives me a notification that enter an email address. So this is how you can see the difference. In Chrome browser, we were getting a proper response that hey, you have to add @symbol, @symbol is missing. So this is far more descriptive in comparison with the Safari browser. Right? Again, for the website, if I write something and if I click on send information, it will tell me enter the URL. For date picker, you can see that the date picker of Safari is very different. Here you can actually select just by clicking on these arrows. So I hope these arrows are clear to you guys. I'm not actually able to zoom in more because this is the maximum zoom, but here you can see this is how it looks like. For the time, here you have AM PM selection, and then you actually have to write the timing in here. You cannot select it the way you were selecting in the Chrome browser. So these are some of the pros and cons that we have depending upon what browser we want to use. For color picker, again here you can see that Safari provides a set of colors from which we can choose, but for Chrome it actually opens a color picker for us, and then we can play with it the way we want. And finally we have numeric. So I can write. So you can see that I cannot believe myself actually as well, guys, that I'm actually able to write any text in the Safari for the numerical input. But that is not the case over here. No matter how much I type, it will not take the text, it will only take the numbers. So this is how browsers behave. Sometimes some behavior that you are expecting might not be true in another browsers. So make sure that whenever you are writing code, you do a thorough testing in all the browsers that you expect your users will use. Okay. Okay, now we will move forward, guys. So I will close the Safari and I will open our code editor. So numbers is done. Then we have a range selector as well. So your range. Here the input is of type range, my range. And now there are some properties that we have to give with the range. If you give range like this, you will see that there is no sense of understanding that what is the minimum value, what is the maximum value, and things like that. So these are the things that you can provide while creating your range. So you can write something like min is 0, max is 1000, or let's say we will start with very simple 10, and now this will range from 0 to 10. Let us make it as 20, because now we want to now I want to show you one more property. Now here you can see that we can smoothly move from one value to another. We can smoothly move our range. What if we don't want that? What if we want to give a step of 5? That means only numbers like 0, 5, 10, 15 and 20 are uh, are accessible. So in that case, see what will happen. You can see that this will only move at certain locations. If I make the step of 10, then it will only go to 0 from here, then to the 10, and then to the 20. So this is how we can define the step, the max and the min. There's one more property known as value, and if I write the value as 3, this means that you have to start the marker from 3. So if I now remove the step, you can see that now we are starting at 3. If I make it as 9 and if I save this, you will see that the initial value of the range will be 9. So this is how range is calculated. We can actually also go into the fractions. So if I do step of 0.1, then you can see that now this is much more smoother. This is going to be much more smoother, because now the denominator is 0.1. So we will go from 0.1, 0.2, 0.3 like that all the way up to 10. So this is how range is added. Okay, I hope range is clear to you guys. And last but not least, one of the most important and one of the most widely used input will be your file. Now we'll add an input of type file, my file. Now again, the behavior of this will depend upon browser. If I open it in Chrome, you will see that I'll get this choose file, and when I click on choose file, it will open my browser, the finder window, and then I can click anywhere and I will click on open. This will actually load that file over here so that you will have an idea. If I copy it and if I open it in Safari one more time, you will see that range also looks very different over here, and then choose file, and then this is how it works. Okay, so this is how different browsers act to different types of input bars. Okay, so in files, then we can go to one step further and just accept few types of files. So for example, here I will only accept PDF, for example. Okay, if I save it, then you can see that when I go to choose file, I cannot select these files. When I click on MP4 file or MOV file or these PNGs, it will not work. You can see, but when I click on this document file, then it will work. When I click on this PDF file, it will work. This PDF file, it will work, but it will not work on the RAR file or PPTX file and things like that. Just like that, we can define what type of input is okay. So, generally, when you will create a form, you will have some sort of choose file where you can only upload images, like PNGs and JPEGs and things like that. So this is how they actually control that what type of file is accepted. Now if I do it and if I click on choose file, you can see that I can select these PNGs, not a problem. But if I go to my downloads folder, I cannot select PPTX or PDF or zip or even shape files, nothing. So this is how we control what type of input are we expecting. Okay. So these are all basic types of inputs that we use all the time. Now let's see some of the more advanced level inputs. So the first one we have is a text area. Text area actually doesn't begin with the input tag, but text area have its own tag. So you can see text area with the name my text and with the ID, let's say my text, and you will see that we have few more properties of columns and rows available over here. Let's delete those for now and let's see what do we get. So when we delete this, you will get a standard text area where then you can start writing text. The property of text area is that you can actually expand it the way you want. So generally you will see that these type of text areas are available where user wants to write more information, so description or complaint or suggestion. Mostly these type of inputs have text area attached to them. Now this column and rows property actually defines that what should be the initial impression or what should be the initial size of that text area. So if I do the column 50, then you will see that this is quite in the width it is quite long. If I make it 10, then it will be very short. Similar to this, if I do rows, is equal to 50, then you will see that this is quite big in terms of the height. If I make it 5, then it is quite smaller. So this is how text area is defined. Then so far we were dealing with inputs where then we are actually writing information, but generally you will also have something like check boxes or tick marks, where then you can tick mark whether you want one or you can tick mark multiple or maybe you can tick mark all, right? So these are known as check boxes. So now let's add check boxes. So to add a checkbox, we will simply search for input of checkbox and we will write a name, my checkbox and my checkbox. If I add this, you will see that there is no name attached to this checkbox. This is just a checkbox. There is no name or nothing attached to it. So we can either add name like how we were doing previously. So your checkbox 1, and you can add the name like this. So this is how you will add the text and then the checkbox. So generally this checkbox will have a name and ID attached to it. And you can then add n number of checkboxes. So you can add more checkbox like my checkbox 3, my checkbox 6, and ID has to be different all the time. Make sure that the ID is different. Okay. So this is how you can create multiple checkboxes. Now in checkboxes generally you can select either one or multiple or all, but for things such as gender, so in that case either you are going to be male or female or other. There is no way you will be male as well as female. So generally you will not expect that there should be a checkbox but a radio button. A radio button where once you click on the first one, then remaining two will be unchecked. If you clicked on second one, then first and third will be unchecked, so on and so forth. So we will add a radio button now. Okay. So to add a radio button, we will add an input of type radio. Input of type radio with name my, let's say, gender, and I will write male, and just like that I will create multiple checkboxes. So female and other. Okay, if I now save this, then you can see that when I click on male, it is selected. When I click on female, male is now unchecked. When I click on other, then female and male is unchecked. So this is how radio button is created. If I now open this in Safari, copy, open in Safari. Okay, we have to do /input.html. Now you can see that this is how checkboxes look in Safari, and this is how radio button looks in Safari. So you can see that comparing with the Chrome, these are very sleek and very good looking designs, right? So this is how browser actually, it depends upon browser that how it should look like. Okay, I hope this is clear, guys. Now let's move forward and add some drop downs. So to create drop downs, we will use a input known as select. So in select, we will add my select, and in select, generally when we deal with drop downs, so for example, let's say if we have any drop down over here, so this is not actually drop down, so we will not consider that. Let me search for HTML select to give you an idea. Let's say that if you want to select the your favorite color, right? So in that case, radio button is one way to do this, right? But imagine that you have 50 colors and then you have to select one from 50. Then if you add 50 radio buttons, it will clog up a lot of space, right? So in that case, what we do is we add a drop down so that user can open that drop down and then select whatever color that he wants. And this is the job of select. So inside select, you will have option, and then this is the option that then here you will add actually 50 options. So let's say we'll start with red. So I will add red, and then I will add a new option of, let's say, blue, and I will add blue. Then a third option, green, green. Fourth option, yellow, yellow, and I will add just two more. So let's say uh, let's say indigo, and let's say, wow, I don't even know a lot of colors, that's very sad. Okay, black. Okay, now if when I save this, you will see that now I have this now I have this drop down. Okay, so then I can select any information from that drop down. Again, if you want to see this drop down in Safari, this is how it looks like. So you can see that there is a huge difference between how Safari presents things and Chrome or Brave presents things. Okay, so this is how we add the select and options in our HTML. Now what if we want to give user an option to select multiple colors? In that case, we simply add multiple over here. When I save this, now you can see that we have all these options available, and I can press Control key on my Windows or Command key on my Mac to select multiple values. So this is how multiple values can be selected. Again, you can see that this is how exactly the same way Safari also presents all the values. Okay, so this is how the select is added. To disable one of the option, what we can do is we can simply add disabled as characteristic, and you can see that now I cannot click on red, even though I can see the red over there, but I cannot click on that red. Okay, so this is how we add a disabled property to the option. Okay, so we have seen so many input types, right guys? We have seen text, We have seen password, we have seen email, we have seen website, then date picker, then a time picker, then a color picker, then numeric input, then a range, then choose file, then a text box which can be changed to whatever width and height that we want, then check boxes which can be selected multiple, then radio button which will only have one selection in a group of button, and then this group will be defined based on the name. That means if I change this name to something else, then I can select male or female, but I can also select other, because this other option doesn't belong to this group now. So again, if I make the name same, then this will work again. Okay, I hope this is clear, guys. Then we have seen selection options. So I have options where I can select options instead of, but not red, except red, because red is actually disabled. And then I can allow multiple selections. By holding control key or command key, I can select multiple values. And finally we have this submit button. We also have one more button known as reset. So if I do input of type reset and value, reset everything, then if I select multiple things and when I click on reset, you can see that the entire form is now blank again. So this is the job of a reset button. Okay, so I hope this is clear, guys. So far we have seen different types of input that we can add to our application. Now we will see some of the common properties that we have along with this input. So what do we mean by that? Now when you will see some of the inputs on forms, you will get to know some of the forms will have some sort of help text available inside this. So you will have some name, and then when you start writing, that name will disappear. So that is known as placeholder. Okay, so if I add placeholder of write your name, and if I save this, you will see this, we have this help text available to us. So this help text is there as long as we don't write anything in it. If I write any word in it or even a single letter, you will see that help text is gone. So this helps us to understand what input we should write in it. Just like this, you can add placeholders to any input. I can add placeholder to let's say URL. So write your URL, and you will see that you will have that placeholder available over here. Just like that, you can also have a predefined value in it. So I can have some sort of email written predefined whenever this form is created. So I can actually write a value which is, let's say, me@krishnagloda.com. Okay, if I save this, you will see that we will have a pre-filled input box for the email. So this is how value is used, and whatever data that we will write in any one of these input bars will be accessed using the value property only. We will see how to do that later when we work with JavaScript. Okay, now this value is there. Now we also have one more thing which is known as required. So mostly when you see any sign up pages, at that time your email will be required and your password will be required. Some of the fields will be optional, but some of the fields will be mandatory. Right now, if I write anything and if I keep some of the inputs empty, you can see that I am still able to send information. But if I add a property of required to this password, then if I just write something and if I try to send this, this will tell me that please fill this field. So this is a required field. Only and only when I fill this field, then I can send information. If I keep that field empty, then I won't be able to send any data. Okay, so I hope this is clear, guys. And finally we have one more property which is known as read only. So what do we mean by that is that this property or this input is a read only. So for example, if I write a value over here, then anyone who is looking at the form can actually go and change the value. But if I add a characteristic of read only, then this value cannot be changed. I cannot copy and try. If I paste it over here, you can see that I can paste it. But if I try to paste it over here, it will not work. I won't be able to change anything in it. Okay. So I hope that these basic properties are clear to you guys. So this is everything about input. Now we will see some of the most important attributes that are available and that we will use extensively. It doesn't matter what input tags we are dealing with. So it doesn't matter if we are using p tag or h2 tag or anything like that. We have some of the global attributes. So these attributes are attached to any can be attached to any HTML, not a problem. Any HTML tag, not a problem. So the very first attribute is a ID attribute. So let me write something in it, and you will see that I will attach a ID attribute to it. ID attribute is always unique. So that means once I assign this ID to this tag, I should not assign this ID to any other tag. So this is the ideal condition. The code will not break or your HTML will not break if you don't follow this. So if I add one more h2 with the same ID, this will not be end of the world. I can still write it and it will still work. But this is not recommended because IDs are supposed to be unique. The reason why they are supposed to be unique is something that we will see in a greater depth in a JavaScript lecture. But let me give you a very basic example. I have few options available attached to this document, to this HTML, which are like get element by ID, where if I pass the ID, then it will fetch me that particular element. So you can see that here it will fetch me this P of ID unique. It will not fetch me this another one because the first ID, whatever is registered to whatever element, will only be considered and not the second one. So that is why IDs should always be unique. So if I write unique 1 and if I do it again, you can see that when I try to get unique, then I get this, and when I try to do unique 1, then I get the h2 tag. We will see more about it in the JavaScript lecture, so don't stress too much about it as of now, but just remember that ID must be unique. Then you have a class. So class basically represents the name that you want to give to the styling class of this file. So we have in the next lecture we will see about CSS. We haven't seen about CSS so far, but remember that class name can be repeated. So class, it doesn't have to be unique all the time. Okay. Then we have title. So title is like a tooltip information. So if I write a title for P, if I do this, you will see that when I hover on this text for a longer time, you will see that we get this small rectangle which actually contains that information. So this is how title is added to any web page. Okay, and finally we have a style, which is an inline characteristic to play with the styling of that particular element. Again, we will see more about style in the next lecture where we discuss about CSS. Okay, so I can actually write a style of color and I can do crimson, and if I save this, my text will become crimson color. Like that, I will add semicolon and then I will add a new style. Let's say background color of dark gray, and if I save this, you will see that the entire p tag is of color dark gray. Okay, so I hope this is clear to you guys. We had a lot of information. We have seen a lot of information in past 1 hour. We have seen different types of inputs. We have seen different types of tables. Now I would recommend you guys to practice this on your own. Try to create your own forms where you can try to add these different types of inputs. Okay, I hope this is clear to you guys. Whatever information that you want to get more about these input tags, make sure that you go to W3 schools and look for the input tags. Here you will see lot of input tags available and tips regarding how to create these input tags, what are the attributes attached to the input tags. So for example, we have accept, which we already checked, right? We were able to get just PDF and information like that. We also have checked. So checked is valid when you have these input boxes like checkbox or radio. So I can write a checked property over here, which means that whenever we load the form, we want this checkbox to be pre-checked. Okay, so I hope this is clear, guys. Just like that, there are so many attributes that you can attach, and you can see how many types of inputs are allowed. We have week, time, text, telephone number, submit button, reset button, range, password, number, month, image. There are so many input types available. So I would highly recommend you guys to play with it and make sure that if you have any questions, you ask in the Slack channel. We try to answer as many questions as possible in the Slack channel, and the main thing is that you will get you will be able to talk with the people in the channel who are actually doing are taking the same journey as you are, and this will be very much helpful to you guys. So make sure that you are connected to the Slack channel. Thank you for attending this live meet, and I hope in the next lecture we get started with the CSS. Thank you everyone.